people ask me like, when are we going to get another one? I think it was Tom Anderson might have asked. Shout out to Tom Anderson for sending us.
Well, let's pray that the Lord open. Oh wait, I can hear an echo. Are you? Do you hear that?
Oh, was that me echoing? Okay,
Yeah.
that's weird. I don't know. We're live now though. That was yeah.
No,
All
it's
right,
me.
welcome
Oh,
back.
sorry, it's me. I got it fixed now.
Oh, I didn't hear anything, mate. Okay,
Yeah,
well,
I was gonna
you're hearing
say,
your own thing.
let's just pray that the Lord opens our eyes and ears so we can hear these things we're about to read tonight. Because
Yeah,
some
you freaking got
people
it.
can't understand, no matter how many times you tell them.
They don't have the ears to hear, basically, and that's kind of the way I look at it. Like you can tell anybody anything you want, whether I mean, I guess true or false, but whether they want to take it in or not is completely up to them. Look who we got, Jonathan Toll. That's good,
Yeah,
brother.
yeah. I mean,
So,
what's interesting is like, okay, like I did I did actually catch some of Luke's stream today. He was talking about Paul. I wasn't going to talk about it, but since we are, it's like he goes it's like he's reading this book by a Jewish guy that's like, you know, basically it's like it's improbable that Paul was actually a Pharisee or trained by Pharisees because he disagrees with Pharisees. And it's like, okay, well, if that's improbable, like marching across the Red Sea and a talking donkey in the Old Testament is a lot improbable. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
we have to
yeah, yeah,
have
yeah.
some sense. And they never. It's like I remember this with Sam Harris. Like Sam Harris would constantly trash Christianity, constantly, and
Hmm.
never bother about Judaism. And it's like, I mean, honestly, I read one of his books. I listened to his podcast all the time. And I didn't know he was Jewish. I didn't know he was a Jew until I was like 36. And and I started
You talking
seeing,
about Sam Harris being a Jew?
yeah, Sam Harris. So like
Yeah.
that's how unwoke I was. But this is most people, right? Is that they're just reading these like super articulate atheists who just seem so reasonable and they're just trashing Christianity. And you're like, I want to be
Yeah.
reasonable. Oh, it's a fucking Jew. Like, I see what's going on here.
Dude, even yeah, even to today, even though he's dead, he's still my favorite atheist. But Christopher Hitchens was actually part Jewish as well from his mother's
Yeah,
side, but he didn't know it until
yeah,
like way later in his life. I think he died back in 2011, but
yeah. And he
he didn't
says
even know he was Jewish until like his deathbed, basically.
like 164th or something. But yeah, Brundle says Luke's streaming about
Something.
Christianity is the worst. That's how I feel too, man. It was like, shut the fuck up. And then you can even Google, like, if you just Google like a review of Chaim Maccabee, like, first of all, oh, please tell me what Chaim has to say about Christianity. But it's like if you just Google that book, it's all shit reviews. It's people saying this guy is a cherry picker, not a serious scholar, like he doesn't even do footnotes. It's like, I mean, he's basically like,
What does that sound like?
well, it sounds like what they say Kevin McDonald does, is what it sounds like. So I was thinking
Mm.
of I want to find like the best critique of Chaim Maccabee and then like do a stream on it. And I'll just be like, uh, wow, I was really convinced by Chaim Maccabee until I read this one critique of it, and man, now I see the light. Chaim Maccabee is a pseudo scholar, charlatan, unreliable. Just because it's I don't know, man. But anyway,
It
you
is
can't,
funny. And
you can't you can't. In some ways, you can't look away, right? Because it's like, how dare they? Like, how dare these fucking people? Like after
mm,
2,000 years of us gently, carefully explaining it to them. I mean, come on. But
yeah. Well, that's what my whole stream was about last night. Like, who are these people and why are we listening to any of
exactly.
them? Like, I don't care what you have to say, Jew. You are not
Gee,
me. You do not dictate my life, Jew. Therefore, like, it's like, what are we doing? This is like, when do we stop listening to fucking Jews when it comes to everything that has to do with our lives? Seriously, whether it's the medical profession, Hollywood,
you know
oh, we
what?
can go on the list all night. But
It's quite recent, actually. Like, I really think that, it's like, well, like, I just got a video taken down, removed for hate speech for the first time. And it's like, I made that video. Like it took, it was like an hour
Hmm.
of good conversation. I was thinking about it. I thought it was a pretty good video. I didn't say anything hateful, and even if I did, this is America, but I guess the ADL deemed it dangerous or something, and so they just vanished it. And it's like, fuck you, people! Like, who are these people? It makes over and over again.
Did
And I
you
think, like,
try
I mean, of
to
course,
appeal it yet?
no, I haven't. I haven't even had time to really look into it. But it's like, I was just actually over at Luke's. I was looking in, and I see Mike is in our chat. My favorite, like, coward who always posts from the chat about how smart he is and how dumb we are and stuff. And it's like, you know, Mike's over there celebrating the fact that Luke is blocking the one person in the chat now challenging like the official narrative, you know. And it's like the thing is, man, honestly, Mike, you're making the mistake of thinking that you're gonna win, like because you're blocking comments on YouTube. That's a mistake because what people see is the blocking, but they figure out how to talk around it, and like the noticing intensifies, and it's
Yeah,
not
yeah.
helping.
I was
It's
just getting
not
ready to
helping.
say the noticer. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, what
Hmm.
is going on? In fact, if Mike wants to come on here, and I will calm down and let him explain to me how it is that there are literally thousands of examples of Jews, thousands of examples of them saying, "Dear, my fellow whites, white people suck." And then like,
Yeah.
"Happy Hanukkah, my fellow Jews." Like, where are they
Hmm.
teaching that? Is that taught in like bar mitzvah class or something? Like, what is going on? It's not a coincidence, and it's not helping.
Yeah.
Like, it's backfiring right now. It's not a good look.
Sorry, I was just reading something. Aquavade. Yeah, I have it set up on my BitChute. Sorry, I had to address this question. So I thought I had my BitChutes actually set up to where it automatically like transfers over to BitChute. Everything I do on YouTube, I had it set up. Although I went to my BitChute channel and actually only one video so far uploaded. I don't know if I have to go and like redo it or something. So, I don't know. All right. What do you want to get into? You want to get into Luke 24? So I know you said you read all of the endings of like Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. So the one that I guess the longest one and the one most interesting to me was in Luke 24.
Yeah,
But
yeah, yeah, yeah. I do want to talk about them. I actually am really interested in your take on like what's so interesting about these.
um it's kind of weird, and I know VDR isn't in here yet, but he's gonna say this is heresy. But it is
Right.
weird because there was one point where, let me find it. Okay, well, basically, so Luke 24 is about the resurrection. But here's something, I don't know, it's kind of interesting. And I know I sent it to you because I had a question about it. So actually, if you look at the last verse of Luke 23, and when it says they returned and prepared spices and ointments on the Sabbath, they rested according to the commandment. Like, why are they still doing that? Like, didn't
Mm-hmm.
Christ come to basically abolish all of that? But you said it was maybe out of like a habit or so.
Well, I mean, okay, I have a couple thoughts about that. It's a really interesting question. I hadn't thought about it before, but the first thing is like when they were going there, this is like right before the resurrection. They didn't really know. I mean, I suppose they were supposed to have faith he would come back, but like it says over and over again, they were not feeling optimistic, and so they may have been just sort of keeping the law still, I guess. I mean, maybe, in some sense, the law hadn't been superseded right up until that day. But I don't know. More than that, I think we can say, some of this is in Acts 15. It's not as if observing the Sabbath is banned now that the new covenant is here. Like
Hmm.
you can still do it if you want.
Yeah.
And I think this was for a few generations or so, maybe one generation. This was probably like a somewhat difficult question, right? For if you were Jewish and you were a convert, like the disciples, most of the disciples were Jewish, like in that, among the first 11, and then these women in this circle, these were Jews. Um, I don't blame them if they kept their customs. You can't just stop doing your ancestral traditions like
Hmm.
all of a sudden, because then it's like, well, what are we doing?
Yeah.
So it may have, yeah, I think it's probably just momentum or something, but that is a good observation. I think
Hold on.
they even at one point, yeah, go ahead.
No, I just saw Holly's comment in the chat, and I
Oh,
actually
yeah. Oh,
respectfully disagree, Holly. Yeah, and hey, by the way, but she says the commandments aren't a means to being saved, but there are many rules we are still supposed to follow. I mean, do you think we aren't supposed to obey the commandments more? No, no, not at all. I don't think we are. I think I don't know, it gets kind of tricky, but I think it's a good way to live your life. And if you follow those rules, you'll probably live a morally righteous life. But is it required in Christianity? No, it's not at all. That wasn't what Jesus said. He didn't say follow the commandments. He just said the two pillars. And yeah, so it's not like I don't think it's a law or the rules that we're supposed to follow, because like that just seems very Jewy to me, you know? So I don't know. What do you think about that?
Um, well, nobody I mean, there's very few Christians who like follow the Sabbath in the same way that Jews do. And so, I mean, at the very least, there's a line somewhere in like Corinthians or something that says when the priesthood is changed, the law is also changed. You can almost look that up if you let me see if I can find it real quick. But yeah,
Well, then she asked, like, what is sin? Like, I'm not,
right.
you still have sin, but I think the kind of the point with like Romans 7 and 8, it's the law of sin, meaning it's inevitable. It's going to happen regardless whether you want it to or not. So it's
Uh,
like,
it's okay. I agree with. Here's the thing: is this is Hebrews 7:12 that says, "When the priesthood is changed, the law must be changed also, and if the priesthood is
mm,
changed, the law must also be changed to permit it." Um, oh, it's like I think it's a good question. I've always thought this is a good question. It's kind of a hard one
hmm
because basically, like you go, "Well, what am I supposed to do?" You know, like if I don't have to follow the commandments. What am I supposed to do? And I think this is the difficulty of like life by the Spirit. It's something that's very hard to explain to like outsiders because like it takes practice and you fail and it's almost by your failures that you start to develop an intuition about what the good is. And then there's the whole
hmm
thing about like the Spirit has been sent to you and the Spirit sort of like facilitates this whole it's the process of discernment, didn't we? I think
hmm
that's one
yeah,
of those
yeah, yeah,
words that
yeah,
we
yeah.
um
Discernment. Well,
like
oh,
let me
shoot, we
see if
got
I
into
can
that
find
one
that.
day. I forget what it was.
Yeah,
What we went over.
yeah, I'll find it in just a second. It's with
Damn.
knowledge. It's like it said something about taking practice to discern, and it's like I don't know, I'll find it in a minute, but the point is that like you're gonna screw up. Here it is. It's Hebrews 5:14.
Okay.
And it's that awesome part about solid food, right? And milk. So solid food is for the mature, for those who have their powers of discernment trained by constant practice to distinguish good from evil.
hmm
So this constant practice of like it's something that you probably acquire over the life, like over a lifetime. And I think that
What comes with
this
wisdom, right? Like that's the whole point of wisdom.
Yeah, but this is what drives people back to like Judaizing is that they go like they hear me talking and kind of fumbling for words or at least like searching for words and they go like, yeah, this isn't clear enough. We need to give people, clear rules. Um it's do you have your Bible with you?
Yeah.
Read Hebrews 5 like 11 through 14 for us.
Let's see. So, warning against apostasy. About this, we have much to say, and it is hard to explain since you have become dull of hearing. For though by this time you ought to be teachers, you need someone to teach you again the basic principles of the oracles of God. You need milk, not solid food, for everyone who lives on milk is unskilled in the word of righteousness, since he is a child. But solid food is for the mature, for those who have their powers of discernment trained by constant practice to distinguish good from evil.
Yeah, this
Base.
is what so this is the letter to the Hebrews. I mean, it's to the
Mm-hmm.
Jews, and
Yeah.
he's saying like, you guys aren't getting it. You still are drinking mother's milk, you know. But like
Mm-hmm.
a grown up is going to be able to eat solid food, and solid food is this like kind of life by faith. And like that's well, how do you get? Here's the question: is how do you get constant training or practice in distinguishing good from evil and in discernment? Like, isn't it
Gotta
by
live. You have to live life.
yeah, living like you
Yeah.
by somewhat groping in the dark a little
Mm-hmm.
bit, and you kind of figure out like, oh, that one felt bad.
Yeah. It goes,
You
it's
know,
straight up Galatians 5.
yes,
It's
the fruits of the
like,
spirit, and
yeah,
like if you want
exactly.
a list,
Exactly.
that's a good
Mm-hmm.
one. Yeah,
Yeah. And
but it's
oh,
a
let me
good
find it
question. I
actually.
mean, especially for thinking about how to raise kids, right? Because you do have to raise kids on milk for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And like I
Because
teach my
they're kids, they
kids,
have no wisdom, they don't have life
yeah,
experience, you know?
yeah. And I'm not like I tell my kids the Ten Commandments, like they know them and I've read them, but
Mm-hmm. A bookmark.
eventually, like eventually they're going to go, why don't we observe the Sabbath or something like that, you know? And that's when they start to be ready for solid food.
I see Vivian in the chat. No, I'm not going to have my kids
Judaizing?
figure it out. But you kind of have to. Like Vivian, I'm sure you did. I mean, I don't know exactly how you grew up, like how much influence like Judaism had on you, but there is a point where you broke away from your family and you went out and you had to live life. I did the same thing. I left home at 18 to join the fucking military. You know, like I had to go. I did my own thing, and I'm glad I did because I learned so much by the time I was, I don't know, 23 when I had my first kid. Just in that time span from graduating high school, then having my first kid, I learned so much, probably way more than what my kids or my kids, my
Okay,
friends
I
went to
mean,
college and did.
like, okay, we're all living through this time of great, like, degeneracy and like widespread kind of mammon worship and stuff, right? And so what we have a tendency to do is to like retreat into legalism and because yes, I mean, it's true. A lot of us had parents that gave us probably too much freedom and not enough guidance.
Well,
Um,
I mean, I'm not saying I didn't have any guidance whatsoever. I'm just saying, like, I grew up pretty rough, like divorced parents and whatnot. But I don't know, I still had morals instilled in me as a kid, and like, I'm thankful for that. But either way, I still had to go out and experience real life with real, other adult people.
yeah.
That's kind of what I'm saying. But with kids, yeah, you have to. I definitely think you have to teach them morals and what's right from wrong, but I think it also kind of comes natural, and like the same
Well,
way.
like Vivian says, defining sin is not retreating into legalism. Okay, but what started this conversation was, should we be observing the Sabbath or not? And it's like, I don't know any Christians. There's no Christian church that teaches that you can't use electricity on the Sabbath and you can't,
Yeah,
drive a car on the Sabbath.
you had to rip
And
toilet paper
so
the day before.
yeah, yeah, exactly. There's nobody doing that. And so, like, you all, even Vivian or Brundle or whoever else is already admitting we're not keeping Jewish law.
Hmm.
So then it's like, well, okay, well, what do you mean by sins? Like, you're in the same position that we're in if you're not like following the 613 mitzvahs, which of course you're not, because all through the New Testament it says don't do that. So yeah, I mean, it's like people hate this because they want the answer, but this isn't. I mean, read your Socrates. Like Socrates didn't have the answers; he had questions and skepticism, and he had the demon or the daimon in his head saying like, "Don't do that." And you have that too. You've seen Pinocchio, and you know about Jiminy Cricket, and like my daughter lies to me sometimes, but she feels bad about it. And it's like I can see that on her face, and that's the
Hmm.
law announcing itself in her heart. And it's
Yeah,
there.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
really there.
Well, then Vivian said, no, I'm keeping the Christian law. What's the Christian law? There is no Christian law. There's no law. There's commandments that say love God with all your heart and love your neighbor, but there's no law. That's the whole point of Christianity. It's that the law is the yoke on your neck. So as soon as you break free of that, you have the spirit that'll work in you.
Right.
Like
Well, I think,
I don't
like,
think
don't you
that we're
think
born
there's some
natural
value?
killers. Like that's what Sam Harris is. Like, you know, humans having an like this ornate, I don't know, what's it called? Uh what's the shit, sorry, it's getting late.
Who said this?
I think I want to say it was Sam Harris that said something along the lines of human beings are just automatically kind of bad and they need morals to teach them how to be good. I don't believe that. I don't think that's fully true. I mean, maybe some people are. Um, Obviously not all, but like I say that because I have daughters and I see the way like my oldest daughter, she is a mother hen. It comes natural to her to like be loving, caring girl. You know, my youngest, she'll hold like baby dolls. Like I didn't teach her how to hold a baby. She's only 3 and she'll hold it up like natural mother would, you know. And I think there's a lot of things like that and that's kind of instilled in us as human beings.
I mean, it's not that I'm not a Calvinist. It's not that people are like totally depraved. But on the other hand, like, I do think you have to acknowledge this, like, basically original sin or the sin impulse in human
Hmm.
beings, because the point is, like, without it, there's no reason to come to Christ. This is what Paul says in Romans 7. Like, if it wasn't for the announcement, thou shalt not covet, I wouldn't have known what coveting was. So, I mean, unless you
Hmm.
think that's because he was a Jew and he needed the law, like that, which you might. I mean, that's what some people think. I don't know. I actually don't know the answer to this. It's a good question.
Yeah, it is. And it's kind of I don't know, it's a big one. It is a big one. I guess that'd be like a major difference between Catholicism and Christianity or Protestantism, I guess. I guess depending.
Well, I mean, like, it's like, to me, you really have to have a sense of what's like of being a sinner for all of this to
Hmm.
get started.
Well, that's I just saw somebody in the chat said it's natural law. It's a natural law for humans to be a sinner. Like
Yeah,
it goes back straight to Genesis. If God made humans
yeah.
perfect without sin, then Adam and Eve would not have
Hmm.
eaten of the forbidden fruit, basically. But they're
Yeah.
human. They're human, you know? So of course we're gonna sin. It's like no matter what, we're gonna sin.
It's like
That is
the
law.
law. Here's the thing: is like, to me, the law is like if Adam and Eve, after they got kicked out of the garden, like, then kept never eating, like, apples, theoretically apples.
Hmm.
But it's like, no, you're already out of the garden, so it doesn't matter. You can eat the apples now. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like,
Hmm.
the law has changed kind of. And I think that, I mean, there's some value in remembering, like, this is why the Old Testament is the prefix to the New. Like, it's there so that we can see what was,
Hmm.
but it's not what is. And yet, like, to understand what is, you kind of have to have a sense of what came before it, or like what the law was.
Hmm.
I think. I
No, I agree. You like, have to have a comparison. Otherwise, like you don't know anything. So the comparison is part of, gaining knowledge and wisdom, I think.
Here's okay. You
Predestination
know
is
what? This is
awful.
actually very related to Luke 24. If you flip the page, where, like, to chapter 24. So I asked you, like, why, like, what's so interesting about this chapter?
Hmm.
And to me, it's what, like, Aristotle even wrote about this a lot in literature. It's called recognition, scene of recognition. So
Yeah.
it's like when it clicks. And in this scene, of course, it's extremely important. It's like it's recognizing the Lord, like, so, in terms of, like, behavior or something, that what that means is, like, how do you recognize the good? How do you recognize sin, the bad, and the good? You know, and
Hmm.
I mean, it's interesting, right? Like, they don't recognize him at first.
Yeah. Well, if you go to Luke 24:16, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. Their
Yeah.
eyes were kept from recognizing him. Why? Like, what was the purpose of that? You know?
Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, that's really interesting, isn't it? Like, first of all,
It
here's
is
this
weird.
guy
They would
you've
all
been following
recognize
around.
Jesus. Christ, you know?
Yeah, like Peter has proclaimed him the Christ. I mean, they crucified him for heresy, basically. And you're going to, I mean, where are they here? They're walking on the road to Emmaus. What does it say? How many days later? That very day, actually, the very day. They're walking around and he shows up, but their eyes were kept from recognizing him. And listen to this. And he said to them, "What is this conversation that you're holding with each other as you walk?" And they stood still, looking sad. Then one of them, named Cleopas, answered him, "Are you the only visitor to Jerusalem who does not know?" Like, they still don't recognize him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, uh, please explain to me in what universe that could happen. You know what I mean? Like, you're telling me, like, that just seems so improbable to me, unless, well, I mean, as it says, I think in the Mark resurrection story, like there was something about his physical aspect that was changed. Like he actually looked like a
Mm-hmm.
different, he's in a disguise or something at this point. And
Yeah,
so
it's
part of
that's
this is
just
like
that's
the
weird.
trick about this is that they recognize him, just as happens in Matthew 16:17, the first time that Peter recognized him as the Messiah. They recognize him not by flesh and blood, but by like spiritual seeing, by third eyes or something, you know?
Well, then it says when they finally, well, actually, in verse 20,
Hmm.
in Luke 24, and how our chief priests and rulers delivered him up to be condemned to death and crucified him.
Hmm.
Isn't that crazy? Our chief priests and rulers.
Yeah, that is crazy.
But okay, so when they actually wake up, so he's in their house after they invite him in, and then he's at the table. See verse 30. When he was at the table with them, he took the bread and blessed and broke it and gave it to them, and their eyes were open and they recognized him, and he vanished from their sight.
Poof.
They said to each
Yeah,
other, "Do not our hearts burn within us while he talked to us on the road, while he opened us to the scriptures."
yeah.
So it was, I don't know. I guess he was. What do you think? Like just talking to him, and then he does something like blesses the bread.
I mean,
Like, I don't know. Is that like a Jewish thing to do? Jews like pray before eating? I'm curious. I really don't know. Do Jews like bless their food before eating, like
well,
Christians do?
I mean, famously, like that was supposed to be the Last Supper was supposed
Right.
to be
Yeah. Yeah. That's
during,
what I'm saying. So maybe that action was what proved it to him, on top of everything else they
yeah,
talked about.
well,
I don't
yeah,
know. I
yeah,
don't
sure.
know.
There's
I'm just
there's
making guesses.
obviously like an echo of the Last Supper there,
Hmm.
and then I think isn't it one of the other versions he eats fish and they recognize him in
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's
But like
also
that,
42, verse 42.
oh, is
They
that in
gave him
this
a piece
one?
of broiled fish, and he took it and ate it before
Yeah.
them.
Which maybe harkens back to when he fed the 5,000 or the 7,000 or
Hmm.
whatever. But I mean, man, it's this thing about recognition is so interesting because, like, of course, there are those other like the warnings. The other side of this coin are all those warnings about false prophets, right? So, like, people will come saying they're the prophet or they're the Messiah. Like, don't
Hmm.
believe them. Don't be fooled. Strong delusions will come. False teachers, deceivers of every sort. Like, this is all like they're warning us against that, and so it's a really important question. I suppose even now, like, how do you discern, or how do you recognize like the true one from the false one? And it's not it's kind of a scary thing, right? Because like even the original
Yeah.
disciples didn't see him at first. My Yeah, we should actually look at Matthew 16, 15 through like 20, because these are those famous verses that, like, Vivian loves this because all the Catholics love this because in their minds this is the thing where it's like, see, Jesus handed the keys to Peter, like literally, and then he just gave the keys to the next pope and the next pope and the next pope. I mean, I'm going to disagree here, but I'd rather actually avoid the Protestant Catholic interpretation of it. But it's the scene where they're walking along. These are just the disciples and Jesus. I love this question, first of all, right? Because he's like, it's like, he goes, this is in verse 13. He goes, who do people say the Son of Man is? Like, that's such a fucking, what an interesting question.
Mm-hmm.
Who do people say this? He doesn't even say, who do people say I am? But I think he means that, or at least they think he means that,
Wonder what
because,
another. I'm gonna look at the complete Jewish translation of this. Actually,
yeah, okay.
I'm gonna
So
look it
I'll
up
just
real
read the
fast.
rest of it while you're looking.
Yeah, go
So
ahead.
they replied, some say John the Baptist. Okay, John the Baptist had just been beheaded. So that's weird enough, isn't it? That means people around there are saying Jesus is like the currently reincarnated version of his second cousin who just got decapitated. That's extremely strange. Or Elijah, who's a prophet who's been dead for 700 years, or Jeremiah. That's who people are saying he is. And so then Jesus goes, but what about you? Who do you say I am? And that's when Peter says, you're the Messiah, the Son of the living God, which is the right answer. And then Jesus goes, this is so important. He goes, blessed are you, Simon, son of Jonah, for this was not revealed to you by flesh and blood, but by my Father in heaven. So how does Peter recognize the Messiah? Not by flesh and blood. That even means not by like miracles or anything, not by like the stuff he's doing, not by like sight, but by like spirit, as Jonathan Edwards says. Like, this is a divine and supernatural light, and it's like given to some people to recognize it.
Hmm. Well, so I read the King James version verse of, let's see, 13 says, well, the end of it, whom do men say that I, Son of Man, am?
Oh, good. Yeah.
And then the complete Jewish Bible says, oh hell, where'd it go? Who are people saying the Son of Man is? Okay, yeah. Well,
It's got to be him. I mean, it's him, because when Peter
yeah.
answers, you are the Messiah, the Son of the living God, he goes, good job, Peter. You get
Mm-hmm.
it. But the trick
There's,
is, how does Peter get it? And the answer is not by flesh and blood. And like, of course, through the rest of the New Testament, there's this setup between like flesh and spirit. These are like opposed to each other. Galatians makes it so clear, Romans makes it clear. Like, and so Jesus is saying, like, don't see by flesh. Like, don't look at stuff. I mean, what do we mean by flesh? We mean like, don't be such a fucking materialist. Like, see with light, something like that.
well, yeah, that's what kind of goes with the discernment, with the recognition, right? It's they were able to
Absolutely, yeah,
recognize him
yeah.
through, whatever
Whereas,
their
hey,
conversation was, and then the
remember
dinner.
remember that line? I think it's in 1 Corinthians 1:23 that goes, "The Jews demand signs, and the
Yeah.
Greeks seek wisdom." And so this is the problem, right? Is that a Jew is going to look at Jesus and go like, "Do a miracle. You do a miracle." And
Well, that's what
Jesus says,
Satan did. Remember in the
"Yeah, of
story,
course,
it was in
always.
Luke. He tries to test him, right? He's like, jump
Hmm.
off this building,
Yeah,
and he's like,
yeah,
no, no, God is not to be
yeah."
tested.
You only, what does he call it? A perverted and adulterous generation or something.
Yeah.
I love that. You know, you people are sick. Like, he goes, the only miracle you'll get is the miracle of Jonah, which is, basically like 3 days down in the belly of the whale and
Hmm.
then restored. It's amazing. It's like, I mean, he calls it. He calls it in that moment and says that's what's going to happen. 3 days, and on the third day he was vomited back out on the beach or something. Yeah. Oh, I did want to look at Mark too, the end of Mark, because Mark is interesting, right? Did you read Mark today or not? The last one?
No, 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 I
Well,
didn't. All right, I'll go to it.
I
What chapter is the
all
very
right,
last
so
one, huh?
yeah, Mark 16.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because
No, I read this
this
last
is
night. Yeah.
this is the earliest gospel, and supposedly it's written before the destruction of the temple, like they think 67 to 69 or something like that. Um, and like verses 1 through 9 are the resurrection, but it's not like the other gospels. So
Mhm.
it's basically like they get there, the tomb is empty, and then verse 8 says, "And they went out and fled from the tomb, for trembling and astonishment had seized them, and they said nothing to anyone, for they were afraid." And then it says in most Bibles, it'll say some of the earliest manuscripts do not
Mhm.
include 16:9 through 20. So that's the
Yeah,
last
so mine
version.
says.
So like imagine this. I mean, now first of all, Paul has been preaching all over Ephesia, Galatia, Thessalonica, or whatever,
Mhm.
from like at least, well, from 48 we have his letters, you know. So a solid 28, 22 years of Paul preaching. When they finally go like, we got to write these gospels down now, presumably like what Paul was saying was some version of these gospels, but eventually they get written down. And it's pretty fucking weird, isn't it, that the earliest manuscripts don't even mention the part where he shows up to the people on the road to Emmaus, or uh, uh, back in Galilee or whatever. Like, there's nothing. It's just like empty tomb, and they ran away scared and didn't mention it to anyone. Like, imagine if that was the end of the gospel. How weird that would be.
That would be yeah, that
Be a
would be
different.
kinda strange, like, what? Well, it wouldn't prove the resurrection story, right?
Well, it would
I
like
guess, maybe.
it would actually. It just seems much more mysterious. Like you'd be like, what? Like how? That's the ending, you know? Um, but yeah. So then, if you go to like verse 11 there. So, and again, like I guess these verses aren't included in the earliest manuscripts, but they're still really interesting. Verse 11 says, "But when they heard that he was alive and had been seen by her, they would not believe it." So Mary Magdalene apparently sees him and then goes back and tells the disciples it, and their first reaction is disbelief. And like that's one of those interesting verses to me where it's like, well, why would they put that in here? I mean, that's a pretty clear um that just seems like human nature. Like I wouldn't believe it either, you know? Like it's fucking unbelievable. You're talking about a dead guy coming back. And then it says, after these things, he appeared in another form to two of them. Isn't that like, that's perfect. Like that fits with Luke 24. He appeared in another form.
Well, then it also fits with, in John let's see here. In John 20:15, Jesus said to her when this is, Mary Magdalene, he says, Jesus said to her, "Woman, why are you weeping? Whom are you seeking?" Supposing him to be the gardener, she said to
Right.
him, "Sir, if you had carried him away, tell me where you have laid him, and I will take him away." And then all he did was say, "Mary," and instantly
Hmm.
she knew, like, she knew it was
Yeah.
him, you know?
Yeah.
Amazing.
But she didn't know when she was talking to him. I mean,
Yeah.
it does. I've always loved that line. Supposing
Wow,
him
that's
to be the
amazing.
gardener, like what?
Yeah,
What? Like the
yeah.
gardener? What?
His
So he
own
looked like?
not his own mother, but Mary Magdalene, like,
Yeah,
she was with
yeah,
him all the time.
yeah. Like
She
it
didn't
just
recognize
seems.
him.
I don't know, man. If you take the thing in Mark about it where it says he appeared to them in a different form, yeah, it's heretical. We were hesitating earlier before Vox Day Respecter got here. I mean, it's heretical, I guess, but it's like you know, yeah, you can watch this like like the children's version of it, kind of like where which I mean I see. Look, you get into the kingdom of heaven as a child, so that's a good thing if you can do it that way, like believe without seeing, you know.
Mhm.
But I guess like sometimes I have a little lack of faith, and I like don't understand exactly what's happening here, and it does like there's some really interesting language in here about how the recognition happens and like why it's even difficult, right? That's the point, I guess, is that it's difficult. It's not simply him. Like that he doesn't look like he did 3 days earlier.
Mhm.
And like I think that means a lot. Like that means it's not just like how do you recognize Jesus? It's like how do you recognize the good? How do
Not
you
by the
recognize?
flesh. You don't
Yeah,
recognize him by the
exactly,
flesh is exactly
exactly.
what I'm getting from this anyways. Like, they
Yeah,
recognize it by the spirit somehow or
yeah,
another,
yeah. That's
you
what
know?
it is. Yeah, and that's probably why they don't recognize him at first. Like they haven't had their their bell rung quite yet, you know? Like you have to flip that switch and start to see with like kind of divine eyes. It's different. And like, okay, well, you finish thinking about it and then I have a thought
No, so
related.
well, in Luke 24, verse was this 39, see my hands and my feet, that it is I myself. Touch me and see, for a spirit does not have flesh and
Mm,
bones, as you see that I have. Like
whoa.
deep. And
That's
then
interesting.
when you drop down to verse 45, and then it says, then he opened their minds to understand the scriptures. He opened their
Right.
mind.
Yeah, that's what it is. I have
That's
this
that third eye, right?
I think yeah, it has to be. It has to be. It's something more than yeah, and yeah, VDR is right. He like basically walks through a locked door. Um, so like something what do you call that? Like extraordinary is happening. I guess that's all we
Hmm.
have to say. Like and it's a mystery.
Yeah.
Um,
I don't know, but it seems like this is where, and I'm going to sound completely heretical when I say it, but it seems, I don't want to say shape shifting, but it's almost like a spirit kind of transferred, it like transferred to another body. I'm not saying reincarnated, but maybe taken. I don't know. I don't know. I'm just trying to figure out why
yeah.
they would not
Well,
recognize Jesus.
I mean, I have sympathy with this view. So I sent you that thing about, remember some of the chat will have seen, this was an old, if you're older, you maybe saw the Denzel Washington movie called Fallen.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that
yeah.
movie, like that movie was about a demon, but the way that it depicted the demon hopping from one body to the next, it's like if Jesus calls it the advocate or the Holy Spirit, basically like if the Holy Spirit is given in this way where like it's not really bound to the body. Like it's I mean the flesh is dead, you know, the flesh is
Hmm.
dead already. So it's like we what lives is the spirit. Then you could, and this is probably one of those early heresies, but it's like you could imagine that like that the body dies, but that the spirit is what lives and is eternal and is what we are. You know,
Hmm.
I think that's what Paul says basically. Like if I do something wrong, it's not me who does it, it's sin that lives in me. And so like what you really are is spirit. And so yeah, part of it may be that what they're seeing is like Christ energy or you know Christ and not necessarily Jesus of Nazareth, like with the body of Jesus of
Hmm.
Nazareth, but like Christ.
With the
And it's
spirit, you walk in the
yeah,
keep in step with the
that's
spirit, and
it.
that's what they
Yeah,
were doing. They were
it's
keeping in step with Jesus on the road to Jerusalem.
exactly. It's like in somebody. It's it's in somebody. It's in the gardener or
Yeah,
something.
yeah.
Imagine being able to look at somebody who's a stranger or a near stranger, the gardener, not Jesus, but see like it's fucking him. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like that. Yeah, this is heresy. I mean, this is heresy, but it's fun. It's a good one, you know? Be- because like,
Yeah.
well, I mean, the Orthodox teaching is pretty, it's like it's just that it was actually Jesus. Like, you know. And like it does seem like it looks like that because there's the part where he comes back and talks to Thomas and Thomas, you know, demands to see with his own eyes and he touches the wound and it's like okay well that's I mean that has to be Jesus if he's got the same wounds in him, you know. But I'm just saying like these yeah it's I'm playing around with it. You fucking listen to all these Judaizers in the chat are like
Well,
oh
here's the other thing. Who decided how the Bible is right? What if we're right and they're all wrong? You know, like what is
yeah
heresy even at this point, if you think about
well
it?
it's I will say this like I think that it's best practice to stick to the the teaching that like Jesus Christ literally came back from the dead
Mm,
because that seems to be the magic sauce. Like
yeah.
I've never like in other words that one works the best, you know.
Hmm.
Um
Well, when he says things like, tear down this temple and in 3 days I'll rebuild it, like
mhm.
because your body is the temple. So he
Yeah.
rebuilt his body
Yeah.
basically,
That's
right?
true. That's a good point. Yeah. Um
Amazing. amazing.
But yeah, but anyway, even if it's like still him, it's actually him, or it's like his body, but it like see that's the thing is like, did you ever hear that philosophical thing called Theseus's ship? It's this
Mm-mm.
thought experiment. It goes like picture a big wooden sailing ship, and like if you replace one board from the deck, is it still the same ship? You
Hmm.
know, and most people go like, well, yeah, I mean, it's just the same ship with it. But then it's like, well, now replace all the boards on the deck. Is it still the same ship? And it's like, kind of. And then it's like, what if you replace all the wood on the whole boat, like sort of in a rolling process? Is it still the same
Hmm.
ship? And then it's like kind of questionable, um, but
Hmm.
I mean,
Oh,
the point
that's
is
a
like,
hmm.
how do they not recognize him? Like, if he has a different appearance, it's not. I mean, well, did he have a different haircut? Like, is that what you know what I mean? That it just
Yeah.
seems. It feels to me like there is some more like interesting or esoteric teaching in that in these
Well, the
resurrection
I
scenes.
mean, I don't know if anybody can rebuild the Titanic and say, "Hey, look, this is the Titanic," but it's not the Titanic, you know.
Yeah.
So it's like
Well,
anybody, no, well, not anybody can come back as Christ and be Christ.
or remember the scene of the Transfiguration
Mhm.
where he's there with Moses and the other one, Elijah or whoever it is, and it says
Yeah, yeah, it's Moses and Elijah.
he's like glowing white, and there's like good
Mhm.
famous paintings about this, and it's like, well, what is that? Like, I mean, again, I don't mean to diminish it, but it's hard for me 2000 years later, never having seen anything like that, to imagine like a glowing person whose clothes are so white I can't look at them. It's like,
Mhm.
what does that mean? You know, but maybe it's just literal. I guess that's possible.
I know. We should invite VDR on.
Yeah, but invite anybody on. Um, and like we can practice with them. We can like look at them and go like, does this person get it or not? Like that's good practice in discernment.
I'm loading this up.
What's the other one? We didn't do one of them. Luke, Mark.
John only touched on John, only from that moment where we
No,
were talking about the
Matthew. We didn't
gardener.
do Matthew
So
very
yeah, we
much.
didn't do Matthew.
Um,
Go for it. I'm gonna send invites out.
I'm just looking. There's a part in Matthew I love, which is it's sort of along the lines of the same heresy that I'm talking about, right? So, actually, if you go to the end of Matthew 27, I'm pretty sure. Let me double check here. Yeah, it's pretty sure Joseph or not Joseph of Arimathea shows up in Matthew 27. Yeah, and in Matthew 27:58 it says he went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. And then Pilate ordered it to be given to him. Okay, so then the next day they go there, the tomb is empty. There's that like angel sitting there, and it's Jesus or something. Do not be afraid. Go and tell my brothers to go to Galilee, and they will see me there. And then the report of the guard. This is Matthew 28, like in
Oh
one of the.
yes, yeah, yeah.
While they were going,
Yes.
behold, some of the guard went into the city and told the chief priests all that had taken place. So the chief priests are pissed, like they wanted him dead, basically, you
Mm-hmm.
know.
Yep.
And when they had assembled with the elders and taken counsel, they gave a sufficient sum of money to the soldiers and said, tell people, I love this, tell people his disciples came by night and stole him away while we were asleep. And then verse 14 says, and if this comes to the governor's ear, we will satisfy him and keep you out of trouble. And then verse 15, after the quote, says, so they took the money and did as they were directed. And this story has been spread among the Jews to this day. I
Mm.
love that because that's still what they'll
Nice.
say. They'll still say that to this day. They'll still say, if you ask a Jew, like, well, how do you explain the empty tomb? They'll go like, oh, someone stole the body and just moved it, and it's like,
Typical deception
yeah,
by the
yeah.
merchants.
Hmm. I mean, meanwhile, remember, there's a huge stone in front of his tomb. There's some Roman guards
Yeah,
up there who have like high stakes. Like, don't let this body go disappeared because it'll cause, I mean, the big fight. So
yeah. Well, not that, but the stone is freaking huge. Like
yeah,
it's
yeah.
ginormous. It's not like people can just easily roll it away.
Next couple verses too. Now the 11 disciples went to Galilee to the mountain to which Jesus had directed them. And when they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. What? Like, doesn't that, again, this is the part where it's like, well, what does that mean? Like, how are you going to see the resurrected Jesus and then still be doubting? And see, and like to me, I'm like, why is that line in there? Like, what does that want me? What does that mean? You know,
Hmm.
how are they still doubting after they're seeing him? With that's like even because again, it's like if like if if you don't have spiritual sight, like Thomas didn't, well, maybe if you're lucky, Jesus will give you like a miracle or something, and that's pretty cool, and then maybe you'll believe. But now they're seeing with their own eyes and still doubting. Like, what the fuck? I don't know what it means, but it's interesting.
But some doubted. Yeah, this isn't in KJV as well. They worshipped him, but some doubted. Hmm. I don't know. Like I try to put myself in their position. I guess you see all the miracles, and then all of a sudden you see him die, and then he comes
Hmm.
back to life. I mean, I guess there would be some doubt, right? It's only like human to want to doubt something like that.
Maybe
Maybe, I
that's it.
guess. I
Yeah,
don't know.
yeah. I
I'm
don't know
just trying
though.
to think of
Like,
an explanation.
I mean, it's like if you're still doubting at that point, though, like the story ends. There's no more, like, there's no more room. Like, if you're not impressed at this point,
Hmm.
you're not impressed. But it says that's where he gives him the Great Commission. All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to you, like, or to me. Go therefore and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name. Oh, I notice it doesn't say go make disciples of all nations except Jews, baptizing
All
them.
nations,
Yeah,
all nations,
all
all authority
nations.
in heaven and on earth. Yeah, go for it. Make all disciples of all
Yeah.
nations.
I read this thing the other day that was
Dang.
kind of interesting about how Paul happened, and it was about this, and it said, yeah, this verse says to these 11 Jewish disciples in Judea, go to all nations. Apparently, they weren't doing that, like, because how did I hear this? But anyway, the point is that like it took Paul, like they weren't doing it. They were stubbornly trying to convince the Jews. They were like, they kept staying in Judea, even though in one of the ends of the Gospels it says like stay here until the Holy Spirit gets you, basically, which is Acts chapter 2. It's like stay here until you catch the Holy Spirit, and then go make disciples of all nations. But they don't. I mean, apparently they're not doing that. So it's really that's like explains kind of the need for Paul and his revelation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, there's been a lot of gaslighting lately, hasn't there?
Yeah. Well, of course there is. That's what happens when they're scared. It's not like that meme with Starship Troopers with that big fat bug, and he goes up, puts his hand on it, it's like it's afraid.
Yeah.
Have you seen?
Yeah, I mean, it is that, right? Like that's what's happening right now. And I don't know, man. Like it's like to me they aren't they aren't wrong. Like there is a like what do you call it? Like kind of a crisis brewing because people are seeing the like unavoidable conflict build again.
Mm-hmm.
And we're like perceiving that there's this kind of pseudo, they're not really assimilated, they're still themselves even though they live among us, and it's like, hey, wait a minute, they're also running all of our culture, like, you know they can't let this happen. And so like they don't care what wreckage it causes because, and I don't blame them. Like basically, like, I mean, I do blame them because it's like they're willing to destroy our culture so that we don't destroy theirs, and it just creates this uh, ugly. Yeah, it's a, what do you call that? A tinderbox.
Hmm. Hold on, I think you're skipping. Can you hear? Sorry, it was going in and out for me.
Yeah, sorry, I can hear you, but it is skippy a little bit.
What else you got? Anything?
Uh,
Oh, I saw you talking, or you posted that thing about 9/11.
yeah, that was what seemed to me like a pretty big story. There's like it was the University of Alaska did a story about how World Trade Center, these were a bunch of engineers, I guess, determined that like there's no
Mm-hmm.
way World Trade Center 7 came down
Yeah,
without explosions. And it's
or
like,
any of them
oh,
for that
I
matter.
mean, you guys didn't even hear this probably, or if you did, you didn't hear it on a mainstream news source, you know. I mean, it's strong delusions, dude. Like they're setting up some complete lies, or like, you know, and probably like it, you know what? It's fuck that. It's probably been just nothing but lies for 100 years or more, maybe
Yeah.
forever, like maybe forever. So I don't know. And you know, it's like everybody kind of wakes up, like Eki says, 9/11 was his first red pill. Like that's, I didn't even question that one really. Isn't it interesting that like uh when it happened, I was like, yeah, well, like, yeah, that's what happened. And then probably in like 2007 or so, I started to go like, wait, what's this? Like World Trade Center 7? Like, ah, that was the one that really seemed odd to me, you know. But it's
Yeah.
like everybody wakes up, they go like, I'm waking up, like this is fake. But that's just because I was 29 at the time. Like, I mean, maybe, you know what I mean? Like, I bet Watergate was fake too, right? Like, probably
Mm-hmm.
wasn't it? I mean, JFK was fake, and
It's all fake, man.
it's
Every bit of
probably
it's
all fake.
fake.
Yeah,
It's all fucking fake. We're living in the matrix. But now I feel like well, 9/11 was still the first thing for me. 17 years old, that's when it started.
yeah,
And
you got
I
ahead
said
of
it
me.
last night. I got, yeah, well, probably thanks to my dad a lot of it. My mom was always kind of open minded too about a lot of things. But yeah, and then last night I saw Paul talk. He had a question. So what happens if you take too many red pills or something? I forget how the question was, but like, is there a way to fix if you overdose on red pills? Like, no, man, you just sit there. It's like eating when you eat too much edible, like too many edibles. You're like, you're kind of fucked. I
Yeah,
haven't eaten edibles in years, but the one time I freaking ate too much, and I was, oh my god, yeah, red pill is kind of the same way. You can't do anything about it. You sit back and enjoy the ride, and then
yeah.
I don't know, just work it out in your head, I think.
That's a funny image that, like that, or funny comparison. Like
Yeah,
the red
I
pill.
think of you, right?
Yeah, because there, but
Could
like there is nothing you can do, and actually, like that it's that feeling of like kind of paranoia combined with like, am I crazy? Is this gonna last forever? You know.
Mhm.
Um,
No, it's not gonna last forever. Although I
but
got really excited. I was when I first started streaming, I was doing kind of basic stuff, and then all of a sudden, somehow a Brundlefly loops me to the Luke force sphere, and then I'm just like, what the fuck? Like, whoa, whoa!
right,
And
yeah.
then I couldn't help it. I was like, I was blown away. I had swallowed way too many red pills, and I didn't know how to handle it. So everything I'm just like spitting about is juice. And I'm telling all my family, all my friends, and they're looking at me like I'm a fucking crazy person. Like, I swear, God, I'm not crazy. This is crazy. Like,
It's I mean, it's,
listen
you
to
know,
me.
it's actually like see, that's the thing. Like that's actually really, it's like you ought to. I wish we could all recall this better, right? Because the process is so it's like doesn't it just feel like you could
It's
write?
revelation is like
It's like
revelation almost. Like, whoa.
you feel like you could write it down on like one piece of paper. Like I learned this, then I learned this, then I learned this, and then there was no going back. But
No,
it's
I
not
don't
that
think I could
simple
write it
somehow.
down. No,
You
no,
know,
no,
it's
no,
like
no.
there's a
Because
lot going on.
yeah, well, you have to kind of live life in order to also understand it in a way, you know? Like
Hmm.
John Harris is probably one of the few people that are extremely woke at his age, you know?
Yeah.
And I don't know, for me it was, and maybe you're the same way, but it had to take a lot of wisdom to understand how how deep it goes, I guess you could say. Um,
I mean, the thing about wisdom to me is like it's there's like a difference between knowing and being good at communicating. And I'm still not good at communicating it. Like I feel like I've learned a lot. I kind of have a sense of I have a better sense, or at least I know like what questions to ask and stuff, but I can't explain it for the life of me to like a normie.
mhm.
It's like you go like the closest I got was when I was talking to a couple of Christians, and we had all read this book by a guy named Leslie Newbigin called The Foolishness of the Greeks, which was all about like how the Enlightenment kind of frames everything in terms of reason, and so you can't bring like it basically makes faith irrelevant, you know?
Mhm.
It's like functionally irrelevant. And so I was kind of like, yeah, you know, you guys told me you like this book, but it's like I don't see you doing anything. Like you're not endorsing anything but Enlightenment opinions. And I said, like, for instance, I mean, I somehow brought up the idea of supersessionism and stuff. And then one of them said, well, why does that matter? And I said, well, it matters because, like, I phrased it as carefully as I could. I was like, because it's not Christians in general who are making our culture for us. In general, it's non-Christians. That's what I said,
Mm, mhm.
you know. And they kind of like, they were like, are you about to say Jews? And I was like, no, just not,
The
non-Christians.
Christ deniers. Yeah, we got to come up
That's
with euphemisms. That's why I had like a whole page of euphemisms that the Bible, like New Testament, used. Even the Old Testament, like stiff-necked people. You know,
yeah,
they're like,
yeah,
who is that? Who is
yeah,
that? But I think, no, I think a big part of it really is calling it out. But you have to let people understand like why they should care per se. Like, okay, so
yeah,
what? The Jews run everything. Like, okay, like,
right. Well,
yeah,
they have different
exactly. If you don't know
values
what
than
it,
we do.
yeah, 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 exactly. But
Yeah.
you know, I think a lot of people just think that oh, they're fellow whites.
Well, it's like something like the Holocaust education stuff, you know, or like the ADL being in charge of YouTube is a good example.
Yeah,
It's like you can just read it like off their webpage, like what is the ADL's mission? And it's like we're here to stop, basically like anti-Semitism. And
hmm,
it's like I guess that's an okay, like I understand why there's an organization for that, but it is
hmm,
not my first thought in the morning. I'm not a Jew. Like it's not a top priority for me, you know? I mean, it's
hmm.
just not like it doesn't affect me. It's never going to affect me, you know? And yet like because they hold those positions of power, like that's why the Holocaust education stuff, that's why all the Holocaust museums and that's why the ADL runs everything. And it's like, yeah, that's not how we would do it, you know? That's not what
Yeah.
entertainment like that's not even what the curriculum in 8th grade would be like if we were in charge of it.
Dude, I went on Wikipedia one day and my memory might be wrong, but I think I counted 72 Holocaust museums, memorials,
That's
something to do with
amazing.
the Holocaust. 72 just in America. Why is that here? I don't care about the fucking Holocaust.
Yeah.
Like, I know it sounds kind of mean, but like, why is it in America? We had nothing to do with that. You know?
Yeah.
Like,
It's
why are there 72 of them? There's one in like every major city. Like, don't forget, Goy, every major city you go to, you better check out our Holocaust tribute.
yeah,
You know?
it's one of those things that like just like I
Like,
was
what are you
saying
trying to
earlier,
do?
like I was saying earlier to Mike, it's not helping at this point, you know? Like because people at some point people just go, "What's going on with all this? Like why are we it's like there are other disasters. Like there are other things to concern yourself with. Like for
Yeah.
instance, like communism is a real bummer. And like if something
Mm-hmm.
like communism happens in this country, it could be 300 million people who are affected.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm one of them in that case, and my kids are. Whereas like I'm against anti-Semitism. You guys know I love those Jews, but even if anti-Semitism happens here, it won't affect me or my family, you know?
Yeah.
So if I have to choose between those two and it looks like I'm starting to have to, I mean, that's uncomfortable, but
Well,
like,
we have a bias to our families, and there's nothing wrong with that. Your family comes
yeah,
first and foremost, no matter what.
yeah. Yeah, Holly's got a good question. I'm gonna take a shot at an answer here. Um, what's she say? Matthew 19:16.
Keep the commandments.
So he says
Yeah, I
this
just read
in
it,
the
but
Sermon
not
on the
that he
Mount.
didn't say Moses's 10 Commandments.
Yeah, he says this in the Sermon on the Mount too. I have not come to do away with the law and the prophets, but to fulfill them. Anybody who
Mm-hmm.
does away with the least of one of these, it's Mephistopheles' favorite section of the Bible. I mean, my take on this is pretty simple that he's talking exclusively to Jews. And like Jesus came, as he says, for the lost sheep of Israel. Like he's the
Mm-hmm.
one that had to announce it to them. And it's like, so you have to understand kind of the context of it. Like he's talking about commandments because that's what these people, like that's their register, you know? Um, I mean, I think like it's where he says things like your righteousness must be greater than that of the Pharisees. Like he's talking to a bunch of Pharisees and Jews, you know. So I don't think he's really talking. It's like he's not really talking to me. It's the same as when he meets the Syro-Phoenician woman and she's like, "Bless me, Lord," and he's like, not really into blessing dogs, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
she's like, "Please," and he's like, "Nah, just I'm not here for you. I'm here for the Jews." And so
Yeah.
like this is uncomfortable because, at some level like he's the logos, like he's God, but you have to kind of understand his teaching in the
Mm-hmm.
context of like I mean, the new covenant it wasn't sealed until his resurrection.
Yeah.
I mean,
The
that's I don't know.
lost sheep. The lost sheep. They were lost.
Yeah.
I don't know, Holly. What's your response to that? I should have Holly come on. I don't know if
I
she's
mean, it's
available.
interesting, right? Because they like just keep like just we should stay in that conversation. It's a really interesting one. He goes through the Ten Commandments there more or less. And this young man says to him like, "Okay, I've done that." You know, which
Mm-hmm.
it's like you wonder, right? Like, really? Really? Like, are you really keeping the law, buddy? And Jesus goes, "Well, if you would be perfect, go and sell what you possess and give to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. And come, follow me." And then it says, when the young man heard this, he went away sorrowful, for he had great possessions. Look, I mean, I don't care. Like, Holly can try to be perfect, but my view is that she won't be. And I don't want her to walk away sorrowful like this guy does. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And so I think like this is the same thing. My favorite is in the Sermon on the Mount in Matthew 5, where the thing about adultery comes up. Because like it is possible to not commit adultery, but I don't really think it's possible to not even think it. Like I mean that's
Mm.
human
Yeah.
nature. So it's like, well,
Mm-hmm.
why did he say that? Like why raise the bar so high? And like if it's true that thinking about someone with lustful thoughts is already adultery, I mean, you see the Jewish mind would go like, well then fuck it, I'll just actually do it. But I think what Jesus is teaching there is something like you can't not do it. So you need
Mm-hmm.
grace. Like he's trying to teach them, like, you guys aren't meriting heaven. It's not by your flesh or by your acts that you're going to get into heaven. And so give it up, you know. And yeah, I mean, people they'll spin out and they'll go, oh, so I can just do whatever I want. It's like, no, you won't want to. Like that's the idea, that the spirit will get in you and you'll believe, you actually believe that this all matters. And, then
Well, here, okay,
you'll be
and
drawn
just to
closer to God or something.
just to follow up with that, look at Matthew 6:25. It starts, therefore I tell you, do not be anxious about your life, what you will eat or what you will drink, nor about your body, what you will put on. Is not life more than food and the body more than clothing? It's like don't be anxious. This is a material world, you know.
Right.
Don't be anxious about your life. Like if you keep in step with the spirit, like yeah, of course you're still gonna sin because you're human, but you're not gonna do what the seven deadly sins. Hey, meow
Well, you
meow.
will. Actually, you probably will. I mean, that's the thing. You probably
Yeah,
will.
yeah, yeah. You probably yeah. You'll
But
still probably do it.
you won't feel good about it. You won't like, here's the thing is like I often will joke about, like, this is how a Jewish mind works, is that the Jew will make up some excuse to like satiate their sin appetite. And so they'll go like they'll go to the Asian massage parlor and get a hand job and then go like, technically this doesn't count because she was a Gentile. And
Mm-hmm.
what Jesus is teaching them is like, no, you dimwit, like, of course that counts. Of
Yeah.
course that counts. So like what has to happen is, yeah, at some point everybody's going to go to the Asian massage hand parlor probably.
Yeah.
But like the Christian is going to feel terrible about it and try to not do it, like legitimately try to not do it, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And I think that
Yeah.
that's like a more sophisticated way to live your life than rule following.
Well, I brought this up to you. It is the whole thing of like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the Jews didn't call God Father, right? They didn't. They call
I
him by
don't,
his name, right? Yahushua.
uh, oh yeah, they would call him Hashem
They
and El
Right,
and
right. So they don't
Elohim and
say
all that stuff.
father. So I know I've talked to you about this before, but the whole thing of fear of disappointment, like for me, my big father figure in my life, I did everything I was I was a straight kid. And I think the biggest reason I was because I did not want to disappoint, the strong father figure I had. And I think there's a lot to it. And because
Hmm.
of my fear, it wasn't out of fear of him, it was more internally for me, is like a fear of disappointment,
Hmm.
and from like that I would feel, and I didn't want that. So I would do things, like I played all the sports, I got good grades, and
Hmm.
like I was a straight kid. And yeah, I didn't do it out of fear, like, oh, he's going to get me. It's no, I don't want to disappoint him. And I think Christianity works much the same way. It's like you don't want to disappoint your father God, so you don't you walk a straight line
Hmm.
willingly, knowing that, hey, I'm going to try to please my father, basically.
I mean, and then sometimes you don't,
Right. Yeah. Well, you're still
but
human.
it's
You're
like,
human.
it's the thing about like, yeah, that's a great example actually. Like you still will sometimes, because you're a human sinner, law of sin, Romans 7:25, like you're still gonna screw up and do that stuff. But yeah, I mean, I just think we have an inward, like the law is on my heart. Like it doesn't mean I follow it all the time, but it means I'll know when I'm not following it. And that's not,
Hmm.
it's actually a terrible feeling. Like,
Yeah.
and you want to
Yeah. You
not,
feel
you
kind of
don't want
shitty, right? Like
to,
you
yeah,
feel
exactly.
dirty, right?
Exactly. And you don't want it
Yeah.
anymore. And so like
Yeah.
there's almost this automatic, it's kind of a beautiful process, right? Because it's like
Hmm.
you are being refined, like you're being, like they say about the sculpture, they're chipping away everything that's unnecessary until all that's left is good, because it's like this, it's almost like a punishment to your sin, is the punishment itself or something, you know?
Hmm. Yeah, pretty
effortlessly
much.
you get drawn closer to God, I think, or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah, I agree.
Well, it's like, or you can go the other way, right? Like there's those medieval monks who ended up like whipping themselves with scourges and wearing hair shirts and stuff because of their sins. And like, I just don't think that's, uh, you know, like the kind of thing where the Catholic will go and do penance or something, you know. That's a good one, Aki. That's a good one.
I have that meme saved on my phone, by
Yeah.
the way.
Yeah.
That's so funny. Yeah, I forget. I love these streams. I love
Yeah.
these people in the chat. That's
I mean,
funny.
Ali's asking about confession. I don't know about confession. I mean, I'll tell you this, like I do have a couple of Christian friends, and I pretty much will confess to them. Like I've it and it and so like I know in Holly's imagination it has to be like an ordained priest or something, but
Like,
in my
what?
mind,
Why
I mean,
though?
I have the Protestant mind. Like I think it's just basically we're all saints, like the saved are the saved, and so confess to
Yeah.
like each other or something. And it does feel good. Like I'll say that. Like when I have somebody who I know like believes in Jesus Christ, and and I say to them like I did a bad thing, like I went to the Asian massage parlor or something. Like if they're really in it, they'll go like they'll understand. Like they don't judge me, but they also don't um vindicate me,
Right. Well, there was one
which is
point,
important because they don't
like,
they don't say like they don't say that's okay, man. This is a sexually liberated culture. You do you. Like that's not what they do. But um they kind of go like that's a bummer, I get it, but like, pray on it. You're saved anyway. Like the usual.
yeah, I don't understand the whole point of a priest, like, do 10 Hail Marys and you're good to go. Like,
Well, it's
what?
because you're a Protestant too. Like they have a different schema.
Like,
Like
I'm
in
not saying there's anything wrong with it, but it's almost like if you're bad as a kid and you go up and you get a whooping, like, all right, your mom, dad's gonna give you 10 spankings and then you're free to go. Did you
Mhm.
learn your lesson? Like, you still did it knowing, like, okay, maybe I might get 10 whoopings for this, but it's worth it, so I'm gonna do it. And it seems kind of weird to me. Like, maybe I'm not fully understanding it.
Yeah, I mean, I don't
I don't
want to be.
know.
I'm not trying to be like. I mean, I don't like. I don't. I'm not a divider. I think Jesus says that in one of the Gnostic Gospels. I mean, the thing is, like, I'm not here to take a dump on Catholicism or Orthodox Christianity or anything, and I think they are Christians. Like, I really do. Um,
Yeah, I do too.
like,
We all
I.
worship the same God.
I
We
mean,
worship
think of
Jesus
how
Christ.
like I even put a Christmas tree up, which is pretty fucking pagan, and
No, I
like
saw Norvin in here. I wonder if Norvin puts up a Christmas tree.
if he knows anything about it, he ought to.
I know.
But it's like those kinds of things, you know. I mean, I don't see God like being like mad at Holly for having a priest at all. Like I think that's and I think that I don't think that's bad. Although I would say if if you get that structure so deep in your head that like uh you no longer truly introspect and you don't have that like that feeling that you and I are talking about, then it would be a
Hmm.
problem. Like,
Well,
and
so
I've seen that. I've actually seen that among like certain Catholics who will just like they'll just like grudgingly go to church. They put their headphones in until it's time to get the Eucharist, and then they go up, eat it, and leave before the
mm,
benediction or anything. And it's like,
yeah,
bro, you're missing the whole point. Like
yeah, yeah, yeah,
that's
yeah.
flesh
It just becomes
action.
like a cycle for him, right? It's just like
Yeah,
well, this
yeah,
is kind of what we do, right?
yeah, yeah.
Which I don't know. But there's a part in the book of John, chapter 2, verses 23 through 25.
Mhm.
And so it goes, now when he was in Jerusalem at the Passover feast, many believed in his name when they saw the signs that he was doing. But Jesus, on his part, did not entrust himself to them because he knew all people and needed no one to bear witness about man, for he himself knew what it was in man. So right there, he gets he gets the human condition, you
Mhm.
know? And I think it's that's pretty amazing.
Yeah.
I forgot where I was going with this. Sorry, I just saw VDRs of you
Well,
finally
I
preaching the
mean, it's like
gospel.
this is it's hard to preach the gospel when you've got like friends who have different ideas about it, you know. Like I like Holly, and
Yeah, I
I
do too. I
don't
like Holly a
actually
lot.
think like if the gospel is you have to not go to a Orthodox church, I kind of disagree with that. But I think that people yeah, people
I get to
people end
become a
up
furry.
what? Oh, the peanut butter.
No,
There
you
it is.
said become a furry.
I missed it. Thinking too hard.
I'm getting way off track, but have you heard about what the furries do? Do you know about these people?
Hold on, I gotta go pee. You tell us about
Go ahead.
the birds.
So I've been thanks to Eke, he's kind of helped me with this rabbit hole, and I always knew the furries were kind of weird. Sorry, I'm going way off topic here, but this is fucking hilarious and kind of tragic to me. So the furries, they're the people that dress up in those whack ass costumes with the, they'll dress up as as like a fox or a cat or a dog or a wolf, whatever the hell it is. But they have these. Apparently, it's like a thing for them to mangle themselves somehow or another. Usually it's with dry ice, either their feet, their legs, their freaking hands, in order to have them amputated because whatever, they want to make paws or something. I don't know. But these people are fucking nuts. And no, it was chocolate. This is really funny. Um, yeah, if you guys want a rabbit hole to go down, look into the furries. These people they're crazy.
I mean, I've seen those costumes of furries, and sometimes people turn them into like memes, and it, I don't, t- I'm kind of like, is this like what do you call that? Like an ironic, like I don't actually believe people are like that's not a real thing. It's like
No, it is for some. It is
no,
for these
see, I
people.
think
I'm telling you, I'm
that's
telling
hilarious.
you.
I think you've been fooled. I think there's a new movement, which is like, it would have to be Gen Z people where it's like they're so mentally ill that like they just want to make regular people think that things are even crazier than they are. I don't know. Yeah, I've seen that Eki, the thing about amputated hands and stuff. It's
Yeah, it's weird. It's weird. It's so weird. They go to the conventions and they'll it's basically a sausage fest where they rent hotel rooms and they'll go and like have sex with each other wearing their furry costumes. It's
hey,
a real thing.
can I tell you a story about
Go ahead. Let's
I
hear
think
it.
I told you this already, but I wanted to tell our chat. There's a thing happening at where I work. Don't spread the word about this, people. Like keep it cool. But and the thing is that there's this like let me just put it this way. There was like an excuse for all of the employees to start sending like group emails to each other like discussing politics and whether or not like our institution is handling the politics effectively. And so these fucking if you're at a workplace where there are reply all threads, it's always bad. Like just avoid these always because all it is, we got like at least 19 separate emails from different people. 100% of them were liberals with their opinions about how like literally evil Republicans are. And it just occurred to me that like it's worse than I thought. It's worse than I thought. Like you guys know me. I've been watching streams. I've been reading woke Twitter for 3 years or more. It's worse than I thought. Like these people are uh they're they're beyond reasoning, you know? Like they talk about how like they'll say things like the I can't really say James is asking me why like just like what would be I don't want to I don't want to dox
Mm,
myself. Like
yeah.
basically it would be like if like if the state senator was coming to give a speech or something. I don't know, something like that.
Yeah.
I mean,
A
basically like
Republican
Trumpism.
person.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like some Trumpism thing came up, and they were like, Trump, we don't want our institution associated with anything that has anything to do with the whole Republican Party who makes its living on denying the basic humanity of human beings. That's the kind of thing that people were saying in this thread. And it's like yeah, I mean, James, I'm in academia, so it's that basically. Just don't go doxing me, man. Be cool. And so the point is that like I have this like I admit I have a weirdly dissident framework for understanding stuff. But see, I thought I was like I thought I was kind of in touch with these people because like occasionally I'll flip on NPR and like watch CNN, but it's like I mean, it's scary. The point is that I can't say what I think. I can't even begin to be myself. It's to the point where you have to say 2 plus 2 is 5. You can't say nothing. Like for instance, this is how serious it got. Is there's a protest thing happening soon at this institution. So all my colleagues are like going to it, you know. So if I don't go, they'll be like, "Where were you, man? Do you do you do you deny the basic humanity of humans? Like why weren't you on our side?" So it's like it's getting to the point where silence isn't allowed. You have to clap, you know?
hmm
And I
Don't
mean
they make
that
me think of like
is
the North Koreans when their dear leader died and they're all like
yeah. Oh yeah.
crying. They're like forced to cry.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's
Yes, that's
ridiculous.
what it is. It is like
Just
that.
say
It's like
no.
forced
Like
crying.
that's the thing. And that's straight out of Gulag. I keep on saying it over and over. Just say no. But then like then here's what sucks. Like what, are you gonna get fired and then, not able to support your family all because you didn't clap.
It
You didn't
it's like
cry.
I mean the thing is like and the amazing thing about it, right, is that these are people who call themselves liberal.
hmm
Like what? Like I mean, I just think that's so weird. Like they don't get it. They don't see the just wild hypocrisy of that, where it's like you're the like you're the liberal, but like no, I don't know. Like Quantrell, yes, I am technically protected, but I guess the idea is um like
You're
there's no
not in a
one.
cool kids club or something.
I'm not in the cool kids club, which does make a difference because then you can't kind of you can't like what do I mean? You can't like have the kind of influence you otherwise could if you were in the cool kids club. You know what I mean?
Mm.
So that's a part of it, but there's more to it than that. It's like I just feel like it's a slave mentality. Like it's like yes, I can have my job, but it, this job sucks. You know what I mean? Like at some point, if I can't say what I really think, it's like, what the hell is this? And like people think I'm evil. I guess that's the thing, right? Is th- like they don't have ears to hear me. So even if I said the truth, they just would be like, you know, no,
You're a bigot.
you're bad. You're a bad
You're a
man.
bad boy.
And it's like, I mean, I'm talking about like, I mean, yeah, yeah, I know, James, it's the same thing. And like, yeah, and I can put up with a certain amount of it, but on the other hand, it's like, I don't know. It's just kind of a bummer. Why should I like be blocking GJJD in the chat for trying to name me? Jeez. But
I don't even know who that one is. I've never.
I mean,
Uh,
I guess the point is like just it's like I think it's this. It's like what bothers me about it is that would love to be I would love to be um, convinced. I would love to be convinced by someone that I'm wrong. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Like I would love that actually, because then my life could be kind of normal. But I have these like earnestly held opinions, and it's like I mean, I like they don't convince you. They're not arguing with me anymore. They just go like, "You're bad," you
You're
know?
just labeled. That's what it is. They put a label
Yeah.
on you, and then
Yeah,
it's
you're a
like
bad
the
man.
sign that just I don't know. It's like a mark on your forehead or your right hand,
It's
basically.
unbelievable.
Labeling
It
you
really
something.
is. Yeah.
It's unreal. Damn,
So
that's kind
that's
of
how
black
that's all.
pilling. Give me some white pills.
The white pills this week are. Oh, it was interesting. I thought you were going to talk about education last night. You never got around to it, but I'll tell you this. I think homeschooling your kids should be a white pill for you. Like, I, I wish I could do it. I frankly just don't make enough money, and my wife doesn't want to do it, and whatever. But like, I've been noticing that, like, first of all, like kids from age about 6 to like 12 or so, maybe 10, till puberty are like sponges. They could learn anything, you know?
Hmm.
But public schools teach them nothing on purpose. Like they make sure they
Hmm.
aren't getting any content. Like, so they teach them, you know, literacy, but it's like, well, what facts do you know? Like, what history have you learned? What do you know? And
Hmm.
there's nothing. It's just blank. Well, I know how to, Google. I know how to use Wikipedia. It's like, well, but what
Hmm.
do you know? Oh, I don't know anything.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
know I have skill. I know
I know
I'm
how to
literate.
use a Snapchat
Like,
filter.
have you memorized 10 different poems yet or not? No, I haven't done anything. It's like, okay,
Yeah,
well,
you say memorize a poem. They're like, what's a poem with their
yeah,
fluoride
well,
stare?
no, what they say is they'll go like, why should I memorize anything? I'll always just be able to Google it and read it, you know?
Yes, 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 yes.
And
I
it's
think you were
like, you
talking about
dumb
that.
fuck.
Was it you that was talking about that? Maybe on one of your streams when like nobody's memorizing anything anymore.
Yeah, because that's what everyone thinks. And it's the same with like math. Like there's this like utilitarian view of education, and it's true. At that view, you just go, yeah, you'll always have a calculator, so you don't need math at
Hmm.
all, basically.
That was
But
like the
the
meme.
thing,
The teacher said,
yeah,
"You'll never have a calculator on you all the time." Like,
yeah,
bitch, please. Yes, I do.
yep. But the thing is about that is that like people don't realize that the kinds of serious learning that you can do in those early ages, like
Hmm.
they will shape and refine your mind. They'll help it organize itself. Like the brain is
Hmm.
kind of it's loose, like it's amorphous. And
Yeah.
if you study and you pack it with order, with logos, not with bullshit, but with like true stuff, it becomes like a motor. It becomes a more effective thing. And so, even learning like all the way up through whatever it is, 10th grade math, or you're doing quadratic equations or whatever, which it's totally boring. There's not like a period in your life where you're going to need to do a quadratic equation after
Hmm.
school. But if you can make your brain learn that stuff, it's it becomes like a stronger vehicle or whatever you call it,
Yeah.
tool.
Well,
Yeah.
Justin K in the chat just said, but if you can't know the calculator is right, that's so true. Like, what happens
Yeah.
one day somebody types in 2 + 2 and it comes
Hmm.
out five,
Five.
you know?
Five.
Like,
Yeah.
could you
Just write it
imagine
down.
that?
Yeah.
Could you imagine that? But I think it's
Well,
also really good for kids to be bored.
oh yeah. Yeah. Kids, let me get that point in a second. But
Yeah, yeah, go ahead.
on the 2 + 2 is 5 thing, of course, like the idea of, I mean, a calculator is probably not going to do that for a while, but Wikipedia is already doing it, you know? So if
Mm-hmm.
you're a dimwit and you think, oh, I'll just always be able to like Google stuff, I mean, they're already moving the goalposts on like lots of different uh, narratives, So yeah, you do have to like acquaint yourself with the logos as much as possible so that you can recognize bullshit. It comes back to recognition again, as
Mm-hmm.
we were saying
Yep.
earlier.
Discernment. Yep.
Um, yeah, on the point of boredom, I mean, this is every parent's challenge right now, isn't it? Like, because
Mm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
absolutely, it's just so garden, it's Garden of Eden, fruit of the tree of the knowledge of good and evil,
Yeah.
tempting to give them the iPad and go like,
Right.
just
Well,
shut
don't you
up,
like, I don't
you
know how
know?
often you guys go out to eat, but I mean, anytime I go out to eat, there's always at least one table that has the phone or the iPad out for the little kid
Mhm.
because like
Yeah,
God
they're
forbid the
just,
kids start being a kid, you know. And I'm a
yeah,
parent, like I know it's like when their kids are being little shits in a restaurant, like I'm guilty. I've done it before. I'm not going to say I
yeah,
haven't, but it's like my husband and I made a rule like no phones at the table. Not even if we go out, no phones
mhm,
at the table. So
mhm.
I don't do it anymore. But like, damn, like I remember going to restaurants as kids and we had like little coloring pages and I would just be busy coloring
Yeah,
or doing
right.
the word search or something.
Yep,
But no,
yep,
everything, and even now, even as an adult, I guess even with the I guess technology, it's my mind constantly stays
yeah,
stimulated somehow. You know, either I'm listening to a podcast or a stream from somebody. Either way, like my mind, I'm not really
yeah.
bored even in myself. I'm almost 30. It's strange, man.
I mean, I think that that's like you have to. It's harder than ever, but like, yeah, we do have to teach our kids that like, I mean, even the word media kind of gives it away. Like media, that means like being
Hmm.
in the middle. Like,
Yeah.
get rid of the middle managers. You know what I mean? Like,
Hmm.
be in actual contact with reality yourself. So go outside,
Hmm.
read a book with your hands, play with the toys, or like we just bought my daughters a bunch of the like 8,000 little rubber hair tie things, like a,
Oh
you know,
my God.
and they're
Yeah.
making these little bracelets or something out of them. But it's like, whatever, it's better than watching Nickelodeon, or
Yeah.
whatever
Yeah.
gay thing would be on TV at
Hmm.
this point. So,
Yeah. That's what like kids are. I don't think parents understand, especially nowadays, because phones are so easily accessible and as well as iPads, whatever. But if you just give a kid a piece of paper with a few crayons and just leave them
mhm,
alone, like you're not watching TV, you're not getting anything,
mhm.
and just they're gonna pick up that crayon, they're gonna start drawing.
But I will also say it does take discipline. Like for me, like I sometimes will like get into like I'll be like, oh, here's a Otto Poll is doing a barn burning stream and I can't miss it during the day, and
Yeah.
it's like I gotta turn that off sometimes, and I usually do, but I've been caught a couple of times with earphones in or something, having to say like what to my kids,
Yeah.
and
Yep.
it's like, yeah, it's a real temptation. It's not the easiest thing, but I think. And I think the other white pill is that kids at like from, 3 or so, but certainly 6 to 10 or 12 love hearing someone read to them. And you can kind
Yes.
of hold them
Yes.
hostage. Like you can go like, tonight we're reading the book of Jonah. Sit there
Hmm.
and shut up. And they will listen to it,
Yeah.
and you'll be surprised how much they retain, even of like pretty difficult stuff. Like I read my kids, just for example, I read them some of the Greek myths and King Arthur stuff like a couple years ago,
Hmm.
and still to this day, every once in a while they'll bring it up, and I'm like shocked by it. We heard some reference to the 12 labors of Hercules or something the other day, and my oldest daughter was like, "Remember that when he killed a lion?" And I was like, "No, I don't even remember reading you that." But yeah, it sticks in their heads. It's good for them.
Yeah. They're sponges, man. They're
Hmm.
fucking little sea sponges. They soak up everything. So
Yeah.
I don't know. That's something else. Like being a parent, you kind of always have to be consciously aware of what you're doing because they watch everything you do. And on sorry, I gotta call out Box Day Respecter, but he did a stream and there's like a chicken in the tree.
I saw.
This little kid in the back. Oh shit! You're like,
Yeah.
what did you just say? I said, oh shit!
Yeah.
Like he didn't know, and it was adorable. For like my daughter said that too. I had I had a Joe Rogan podcast playing out loud because I was cleaning and my earphones died. And there was a point where this was like a long time ago, but Joe Rogan said something like, "Oh, it's fucking bananas," and then out of nowhere, my oldest daughter's like, "Fucking bananas." I'm like, "No, don't you say that." But then the
Yeah.
worst thing is like what? Don't say bananas. Don't like no. So I have to like repeat the bad word, in order for
Mhm.
her to even know what the bad word is. But
Yeah, I'm not a I like I grew up in Michigan where everyone swears constantly, and it's like it was all and I had my mom telling me to not swear, but like you couldn't not swear starting in like 6th grade, and it just doesn't it means nothing to me. Like I don't think it offends the Lord or anything, but I think
no, I don't think so either.
I think it offends old-fashioned people. So
Yeah.
part of the trick is I did have to explain to my kids. I actually think it's useful because it's similar to um like kind of managing a red-pilled viewpoint, right? It's like, okay, I've said to my kids, I've said like my daughter came home and she said something like this was my 6-year-old this year, and she goes, Dad, I think I saw, she was like, she knew she wasn't supposed to tell me. Somebody put up one of their fingers today at somewhere. And I was like, was it this one? And she goes, yeah. And I was like, okay, listen, like, here's the thing. Go ahead and do it. Like, do it, try it out. So she goes, and I go, yeah, see, that's what it feels like. And I was like, don't do it ever at someone because it's rude. But like, it's not going to happen. Like, there's not like an ontological character to it. It's just that
Hmm.
it's rude and you'll offend
Yeah,
people
yeah,
with
yeah,
it,
yeah.
you know?
Yeah, that's kind of what I told my daughters too. It's like it's just something. It's just not nice to say. It's because you also got to say well, I see there's a comment swearing is also a class marker. Yeah, I think so
It is,
too. But
yeah.
I know
Mhm.
like high class people that also cuss like sailors. You
Yeah,
know,
absolutely. Yeah, it's
and
like, it's actually, that's a good example of one of those things where it's like the middle class doesn't swear, but like the upper class and lower class do.
yeah.
And so it's like, anyway, it doesn't really matter,
Yeah, you
but
can drink your martini with your pinky out and still like, this is
yeah.
just fucking great. And it's
I'm
okay.
it is
Then
really I have been thinking though a lot like how hard it is and actually like kind of frustrating to raise kids. Uh I guess with like my view of the world, which just is the Christian view, I think, or it's the reactionary view. It's like I think trannies are mentally ill. Okay,
yeah. Hmm.
and so it's like part of
How
it is
dare you?
I
How
know part of it is like and also I really am a Christian and I'm trying to read some of this stuff to my daughters and stuff. And what was I reading the other day when oh, I was reading them Galatians 5 and the second verse
Base.
says if you accept circumcision, Christ will be of no value to you at all. So I was reading through this and I go like, "Do you guys know what circumcision is?" And they were like,
Hmm.
"No." And I was like, "Well, the Jews cut their penises of their
Mm.
babies. And my daughters were like, and I was like, yeah. And it's like terrible. They bleed. I didn't say, and then they suck it like
Mm.
they do.
My God. Fuck.
but
Isn't that
but anyway,
awful? Like, or just, but think about that real fast. You can't even tell your daughters what
yeah,
rabbis do
yeah,
to infants because it's so
yes,
horrifying.
yeah. But I told them,
Jesus.
and you know what they said? Because we also have like an 8-month-old boy, and they go, we didn't do that to him, did we? Like sad. They said, and I was like, no, of course not. Like. We're not
Nice.
Jews. Like that's how I said it.
Oh, I am starting to tell my daughters things. Like, so my sister's youngest little boy, he's 2, he'll be 3 in December, but I don't know where he got. I think he was just it was by accident, but he was on like his hands and his feet, not even on his knees, just hands and feet, like kind of just bent over, and he starts like shaking his butt. And I think he was just being a little 2-year old. And then my sister's like,
Hmm.
Ashley, look, he's twerking. I'm like, oh my, and
Hmm.
then my oldest daughter tries to do it, and she's sick, like just turned 6. I'm like, no, 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 like we can't do that. Like
Yeah.
that's what black people do. That's literally what I
Yeah.
told her, and she already knows color. And I'm pretty sure I told you. I don't know if anybody else in the stream knows. So we were watching that movie Holes with Shia LaBeouf,
I haven't seen
And
it.
there's a scene where it's like a flashback to the 1800s or something, but there's a scene where it's this blonde-haired Patricia Arquette is who this character
Hmm.
is. And there's some black guy who's also a character. Well, there's a part where they kiss, and I said I didn't say anything. I heard my like I was watching TV. My daughter was sitting kind of behind me, and she goes, "Ew!" And I was like, "What's wrong with that?" And she just shakes her head like, "No." She's like, "Mama, why is that white lady
Hmm.
kissing that brown boy?" Like, I didn't say anything to her, but that's exactly what she asked me. I was like,
Yeah. Well,
"You don't
nature.
even
I
think
mean,
about that." She's like, "Mm-mm." And
yeah.
I never taught her anything, like, but I was
Yeah.
like, I didn't say anything else about it. I'm like, "Okay." Like, "Okay."
That's interesting because that's one
Funny.
of those where it's like, you know, again, like from the liberal perspective, your silence is insufficient.
Like,
You
yeah, I should have corrected my daughter,
you're
like,
supposed to
"No,
correct
that's
her.
okay.
Yeah.
They're human too." Like,
Hmm.
"Okay, but yeah, it's natural for her." Like, I didn't say anything. I just
Yeah.
like, that's what she thinks. All right then. My dad would be proud. And I even
Yeah.
told her, and I said it in front of my husband. So I was like, I was like, so and so, my oldest daughter, I was like, when you're older, you can only marry a white guy or an Asian guy. And my husband's like, Ashley, don't tell her that. I'm like, why? Like, why not?
Yeah.
What's wrong with telling her that?
Yeah. It's interesting. Like, I mean, I've seen those studies that say that kids, even from an early age, like, are more likely to smile or keep their eyes trained on somebody of their same race.
Hmm.
It does seem natural. Um,
Yeah.
I mean, Angle Droid's asking about the Christian opinion. Yeah, I was thinking about that. I mean, I don't think race, as we understand it, functioned in the same way back then, in large part because like there weren't large numbers of like, for instance, Africans living among whites and etc. Back then, and so you could live your whole life and not see somebody of like another race. Now you'd see other ethnicities and people from other tribes and
Hmm.
stuff. And it's true that the Middle East was the most like um you know, diverse place probably in some sense. But I don't know. I mean, the only verses I can think of are the stuff about how there is no Greek or Jew
Hmm.
in Christianity. I mean,
And John 8:15, like, you judge according to the flesh, I judge no one.
right.
Yeah, like,
Yeah, I
I
mean,
don't think Christians care about race mixing, it's not their thing. I think Christians' main focus is just marrying another Christian, and, like, my pastor
mhm,
back in Texas, him and his wife got 5 kids, they're all white, and,
mhm.
they even said, like, "We'd be fine with our kids marrying outside the race." And, like,
Yeah.
I'm pro freedom of association, basically. That's kinda where I stand on it. I don't think Christians they don't
Yeah.
cover they're not Jews in the sense, like, they don't care about race like other people.
I mean,
But
I think
then
that in a way, yeah, that's the essence of it actually,
mhm,
right? Is that
yeah.
because it's, and I know this does piss off some of our Wignat followers who, you know, I cherish, but they go like, I mean, Christianity says things like it is not as to Israel. And this means that it is not the children of the flesh who are the children of God, but the children of the promise are counted as offspring. So yeah, it pretty much literally is like, oh, sorry, Sin. Am I dead? Can you hear me?
No, no, he's saying Christianity is pretty much dead to me,
Oh,
Christ on the other
no, he
hand.
was
No,
saying
I
sort of,
agree.
oh, well, let me just finish that off. So the thought was that like, Judaism cherishes its flesh. So that's the whole
Yeah.
nature of Judaism is like, let's propagate the flesh, more flesh, you know. And I do think, I mean, for better or worse, like if you're obsessed with, or I shouldn't even say it that way. I'm trying to be neutral. If you're really into preserving white genes or something, like this isn't the this isn't the solution necessarily. But Christianity in its essence doesn't seem to be about that. And so I think what I see in Christianity is primarily like an I'll say anti-tribalism, but like there's really only one sort of problematic tribe that like is getting BTFO'd by Christianity
Mhm.
historically. So it's like it's what it does is it sort of solves the Jewish question in a nonviolent, elegant way. It goes, you
Right.
guys are now the outsiders, and the rest of us are the insiders. And so, yeah, I mean, um, like all of Europe, for instance, or the Mediterranean, like all the Mediterranean, upon becoming Christian, pretty much dropped its old identities, and there was probably some like intermarriage happening. But again, like that didn't mean a bunch of like marriages to sub-Saharan Africans or to Aboriginals from
Yeah.
Australia or to East Asians. Like this just wasn't happening. So, I mean, I actually think that like in large part the problems of intermarriage or of race mixing, these are like downstream problems from a previous problem, which is the problem of like mammon
Forced
worship, you know.
immigration.
Well, yeah, but why forced immigration? I mean, it could be that it's anti-white or something, but honestly, it's like it's um it's because we worship GDP and money so much that like we've opened the gates, or the elites have opened the gates, and so now you can live in Texas and have neighbors from Somalia. But like
Hmm.
that wouldn't have happened if you know it in like if Christians.
Capitalism, basically, or something along
Basically,
those
yes. Like
lines.
Christian,
Yeah.
some I heard somebody last night talking about usury. Christianity banned usury pretty much effectively, except for in like short little bursts until like 1699. And yes, there were occasionally like bubbles where Jews would be allowed to lend to Christians, but in general, the Christians weren't lending money to each other. They weren't obsessed with like, you know, saving for retirement, or how's your 401k doing, or what are you investing in and stuff. Like this is kind of mammon worship, and it's like I think we can take some responsibility for that. Like we shouldn't be doing, you know, that's like probably sorry, that's probably too spiritual guru of an answer for people.
Jesus Christ. I'm reading what they're saying in the chat because I don't disagree with you. And I mean for obvious reasons. Like even race mixing isn't a thing to me. I don't like it when it's forced, basically. Like I don't like to
Hmm.
be told like this is what you have to do or else you're a bigot racist. Like I think that's just
Yeah.
shit. Um
I
hmm,
mean, I understand. Like, I do get it. Of course, I get it.
yeah, I mean I get it too.
I'll say this, like, for instance, if this is your concern, there are like Korean Baptist churches. There's the Black Church, right? Like the African Methodist Zion churches, and it's like, so I guess you could try to start one that was the European Diaspora Christian Church or something. But in a way, like then that opens the door to like the Jewish Christian church or something. And it's like, what's going on here? This starts to look, it's too fleshy. You know what I mean? For Christianity. But I'm not saying you can't have another solution, by the way. Like, I don't think Christianity forbids um, people from having nation
From
states.
existing. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, yeah,
no,
I
you can
agree.
absolutely do that. Like, I'm just saying the answer isn't in Christianity. You have to, on top of Christianity, put something else. And I
Just kind
think
of
there
common
is,
sense, right?
well, there's like a perversion of Christianity right now that goes like, we have to let everyone in and have to just intermarry with them as fast as possible. I don't think that's true. Like that never was true. That's not something Jesus taught. It's not something Paul taught. Um, and it's not something that the church ever taught until 1965 or something. So, the answer is just like you have to have your politics have to go beyond like the moral frame, like the strictly moral framework that Christianity is.
Hmm.
I don't know. Do you have thoughts about that? Like, do we just like intermarry until there's no more white people? Like,
No, I don't know. Like I keep going. I'm still libertarian in that sense. Obviously, my husband's Vietnamese, but it wasn't like when I first met my husband, it wasn't like oh I'm gonna marry or date an Asian guy because I need to be diverse. It wasn't like that at all. I've dated only white guys my whole life until I met my husband, and yeah, it wasn't like anybody told me to. It wasn't. I didn't even have like red flags about it, to be honest. But I would never date a black guy. I would never date a Mexican guy, like none of those real brown people, I guess you could say.
mm-hmm.
But ah, I don't think I don't know. I think every race should have a right to exist. I don't like it's just the fact that it's forced is what I really don't like. But it's kind of
Yeah.
funny because I've actually used arguments before with like really liberal friends of mine, and I kind of get them. One of the girls I'm friends with, she went to UVA and she works in like DC, and she just married a white guy. And last time I saw her, we were talking something about diversity, and out of like just for shits and giggles, I didn't mean this, but I was saying something about, well, I did my part with diversity, and then she agreed. Like I was totally kind of trolling her to see what her reaction was, and sure enough, she's like, "Yep, you are." And I was like, "Oh God, no,
Yeah.
no." I mean, I wasn't. That wasn't my
Yeah. I mean,
intention
I
with
guess
dating my husband
again,
at all.
like my theory about this is that it could be intentional. I mean, it could be, and I've like, of course,
Definitely intentional.
I mean, I've seen the videos of what's her name up in Sweden saying, Jews will be resented for their role in
Yeah, for their
transform.
role. Yeah,
I get
yeah, yeah,
it.
yeah.
I mean, that's true. But yeah, there's something to the idea that like, well, we did, or like our elites did let it happen. Like, and it's frustrating to realize that like, yes, there were some Jewish converts to Catholicism or something who probably played a role in Vatican II, but like in general, the Christian church just got totally gay for a while. And
Yeah, it
like,
did.
I guess what I'm saying is that the thing about like for instance, you married a guy who's from Southeast Asia, but it's like, why is his family here? His family came here.
They were escaping communism.
They were following weird, like perverse incentives. Like under normal conditions, that this wouldn't be happening. You know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
So like
Hmm.
we're
So
all
you're
kind of
basically saying,
dealing with
like
perversion.
it's because of the perversion. Like this stuff shouldn't have even been allowed to happen. Basically, right? It's
Yeah,
like
I mean,
saying,
yeah,
like if your daughter grows up, God forbid, and marries some
yeah.
Somali, it's like, well, natural circumstances that would have never happened,
Hmm.
because they're way the
Like
hell over in Africa.
Mark Miller's in the chat saying it's mammon. That's our shorthand for like GDP worship. So look, here's the thing: is like I grew up in Michigan. Michigan was this like kind of like you've all seen those pictures of Detroit in 1950. It was beautiful, it was booming, everybody had a good job, whatever. And then they realized like we can just build these cars in Mexico. Like why are we paying? You'd have to pay like a white American or a black American, like 16.75 an hour or something. And
Hmm.
then there was the thing with the unions. The unions were kind of like driving up the price because, the auto workers would like strike. And so finally, like Ford and GM, they go like, fuck this, let's just go build our cars in third world countries. And now all of a sudden you've like pulled the rug out. And then the corollary to that is if you really put the pressure on these groups rather than move their company overseas, they'll go, well, if we can't build the factory in Mexico, let's bring the Mexicans to our factories. And
Hmm.
like all of this is, as I say, this is like mammon worship. This is putting money ahead of God. I mean, that's what that is.
Yeah.
That's the Bible says you can't worship both God and money, and we worship money. to the point where this like multiculturalism is a downstream problem that wouldn't have happened if we didn't do that, you know?
Yeah. No, I agree. And damn, isn't that shitty? But then it's
Yeah,
like,
it's pretty bad.
who
It's
the
really
fuck
pretty
are
bad.
these people? When did anybody just say, "Hey, this is okay"? Like, I want to know who those people are. Who said, "Okay, if you want to build your big company here in
I
America and
mean,
then import a bunch of
usually,
Mexicans to work it"? Who said do that? Who gave the red light or the green light for that?
honestly, like I was thinking about this today. I went to the store and for some reason, I wanted a butternut squash. And like, it's the wrong season here. They're not done growing until like November or something. So I looked at the thing and it said made in Honduras or grown in Honduras or whatever.
Hmm.
It looked like a good one and I bought it. And so it's like in some sense I'm the one doing it. I get, you know what I mean? Like I don't mean me, like you can't really blame it on me. I'm just a consumer, but like
Right, right.
that kind of decision is the kind of decision that leads to, well,
Them
fuck it, let's just
continuing to
open
do it.
more. Yeah, because you can make more money that way, you know,
Yeah, well,
and
the
have more
libertarian
products and
idea
stuff.
is pretty much, and I kind of actually, I really do fall back on that. I mean, I was talking about this today. We went to eat lunch, and it is like you kind of do have to vote with your dollar. You know what I'm saying? Like with Walmart, I just saw a video where some guy in Kentucky went into a Walmart and had I guess it was an open carry, and I guess the manager or somebody called the cops on him. So the cops came in and basically said, "You are banned from all Sam's Clubs. You're banned from all Walmarts because you carried a gun. A law-abiding citizen
Jeez.
carried a gun into Walmart, and they're not selling guns anymore." And
Wow.
it's
Yeah, I
like
heard about that.
it's shitty, right? So what are you gonna
Yeah.
do? Like, no, I don't know. Is it gonna
I'll tell
take
you
all
what.
the people stop
The
it? Like, stop going there. Like, fuck Walmart. You know?
This is a good point. These corporations increasingly are the sovereigns, like in the sense that they seem to have more power than even states have at this point,
Yeah,
especially the
yeah.
tech companies, because like tech doesn't, it's not really in a place, right? So it doesn't really matter where Google is, like it
Hmm.
exists in the cloud. And so, like we want it to be in America so it'll pay taxes and stuff. But if if it doesn't like the policies that America sort of forces on it, or if we tax it too much or all that stuff, it'll just leave. And it's like there is no, it's almost like you need, this is the part that I can't figure out. Like you basically need an international governing body in order to check these corporations, which are already international corporations.
But then
Because
how
like,
did so but here's the argument, and I don't really know what to say about it. But the argument is once the like who are going to be these government officials that step in and mess with a private company? So that's like the big oh, it's a
yeah,
my private company type of thing.
I don't know.
And my only fear with that is if they can do it to a private company, they can do it to you. You know what I'm
Hmm.
saying?
Yeah, of
So
course.
I haven't heard a good argument against that. Like, yeah, we're going to come in and we're going to make sure Twitter doesn't start censoring conservatives. I just wish what they would do is just be truthful. And yeah, I saw somebody say earlier it's a lack of truth in society. But what these corporations aren't doing, like Twitter's not coming out saying if you have wrong think, wrong speak, then we're going to censor you. You know, they'll say,
Hmm.
well, here's our guidelines. And then you have some fucking liberal behind a computer screen dictating what gets said and
Yeah.
what's not. And it will, I mean, they're lying basically, but we all continue to keep using it. So they're going to continue to keep doing what they're doing, you know? And
Well,
I
just
think it's the
think of
same with
how
any
like,
corporation.
just think that like almost any, I can't think of a company that wouldn't prefer like more open markets and more free trade and more, you know what I mean? Like if you're like Google or you're Procter and Gamble or you're, some financial company, like of course you want free trade agreements with Central
Hmm.
America and Southeast Asia. Like it just opens up new markets and profits, increase and stuff. So what we've got are like all these companies all lined up on one side going like, get rid of nation states, get rid of
Hmm.
identity, just feed them football and sugar, and like let us have access to them with advertising and consumerism and stuff. And on the other side, like in the other column, is just like people like me and you, and we're not organized and we don't have money and we're, it's like, it's kind of like, please stop doing this to us. But they have lobbyists 24/7, sort of
Mm.
insisting on keeping it the way it is. It's a really uh, sort of matrix level. I don't know. I
Dude,
don't have
it
a
gets
solution
it's
for
just
it.
like it's crazy. Like, and I keep thinking it's like we the people, because I was thinking the other day, who are why are the politicians deciding how our country spends money? Like, who decides where the budget goes to for our tax dollar? Who the fuck are these people?
Yeah.
Like, why are they making decisions for all of us? There's 350 million of us and only, a couple hundred of them. Why are they dictating us, basically? And then, but
Yeah.
the corporations are all in cahoots with all the politicians. It's, you know, oh,
I mean, I guess I'll tell you what, I actually think there is an answer, and the answer is something like North Korea. But nobody likes that answer. But like North Korea is one of the only countries in the world that decided like we are not joining the international market. And they're a like autarkic, separate thing. And they use
yeah,
their
and they're
own money.
starving, and they're, yeah, yeah, yeah,
Well,
that's true.
I mean, I don't know. I
But
actually
I
don't
guess the
know.
result
Like,
is starving.
I don't know though. I
What
think
if
it
they're
was
not? What if
starving in
they
the
have?
90s.
What if they're
Right.
okay?
Well, think, Ash, I
I
mean,
don't know. I don't know.
don't you think that the propaganda would be like, I mean, it wouldn't, I mean, because look again, there's like 30 million people living in North Korea. That's more potential consumers for Walmart. And
Mm-hmm.
so, like, all of the propaganda would be, that doesn't work. You guys can't do that. But
Mm-hmm.
North Korea kind of broke the yoke in a way. I mean, maybe,
In
I
a
don't know.
very strange way, yes.
Yeah,
And I thought it wasn't Iran on the same page in a way, like they weren't
I've heard
letting in the
that. Yeah.
banks and whatnot. Could
Mhm.
be wrong, and it will correct me, I'm sure, but yeah, I think definitely North Korea. Like, there's no Jewish influence in North Korea, so
Yeah,
stay based, North Korea.
I mean, it does suck. And I was a libertarian. Uh, I was a libertarian growing up, so I get it. And I don't love the idea of all the conformity and the fear of the, you know, what's he called, the great leader or whatever. I hate that stuff. But
Hmm.
it seems like, and of course, we're in a situation in America where like we're also scattered.
Yeah.
We can't even do that. Like it's already too late in a way.
Hmm.
So I don't know. Fuck. I gotta
Well,
go
it's
in
the
a minute
argument.
too. But
Yeah, yeah, yeah. The argument where it says, well, it's a private company. What we're supposed to go do? Make another one? Like,
right.
I don't have the answer to that. All I know is our
Hmm.
current system is fucked, and we're being ruled by mega corporations with
Yeah.
capitalism, and or it's liberalism. Like, it's everything. There's no middle ground, basically, which really
It's
sucks.
it's hold on, I'm gonna read you one from the Bible and then I'll go. It's
Yeah,
Ephesians
we've been.
6:12,
Oh,
which
yeah, yeah,
goes,
yeah. I know what you're talking about.
our
Put
struggle
on the
is
armor of God.
no, it's almost that. It's right before that. Our struggle is not against flesh and blood, but against hold on, it's loading. But against the rulers,
Against
against the
authorities.
authorities, against the powers of this dark world, and against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly realms.
Base.
Or actually, read yours. You have the ESV.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So mine says, well, I should read. I kind of want to read more, like
Yeah,
go
you read
back
the whole
like
thing.
two verses.
Go ahead.
So, yeah, this is my favorite part. So Ephesians 6:10 starts, finally be strong in the Lord and in the strength of his might. Put on the whole armor of God that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. And then stand therefore, having fastened on the belt of truth and having put on the breastplate of righteousness. That's pretty based.
Isn't that interesting where it says like take up the full armor? What I'm sorry, I have a different
Therefore, take up
translation.
the whole armor of God that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all to stand firm. Stand therefore, having fastened on the belt of truth and having put on the breastplate of righteousness, and as shoes for your feet, having put on the readiness given by the gospel of peace. In all circumstances, take up the shield of faith with which you can extinguish all the flaming darts of the evil one, and take the helmet of salvation, sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, praying at all times in the Spirit with all prayer and supplication.
I can't beat that. That's a perfect ending.
Oh, wait, it keeps going. To that end, keep alert with all perseverance, making supplication for all the saints, and also for me, that my words may be given to me, and opening my mouth boldly to proclaim the mystery of the gospel, for which I am an ambassador in chains, that I may declare it boldly as I ought to speak. Ambassador in chains. Damn.
That's us. That's us. You got to
That's
just
us, man.
proclaim it boldly in the public. I think that's the first step anyway.
That's good.
All right.
That's a
I'll see
good
you
end.
later, sister. I got to
Yeah.
head out tonight.
All right. Night, man.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right. Bye, y'all.